Welcome everybody to another episode with Astrid, your APD. We're going to be talking today with Dan Garner on all things physiology, biomarkers, placebo, and lots of different things that we want to be talking about when it comes to health, when it comes to understanding nutrition and supplementation. And I think that is going to be a great episode. Let me know if the audio is great. I hope it is because I invested in this thing to make sure it is actually a much better experience for you guys. Hello, my friends. This has been like, can we do it? Yo, can we do it? Oh, the time zone. Oh my, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for your patience. I think we scheduled this. How many times did we schedule this thing now?
Oh,
Maybe
wow.
5 times. It was completely my fault. I feel like we scheduled it as many times as many months passed. So thank you so much for your patience. I know this wasn't ideal timing for you, but I'm so happy we're finally here together.
I am too. And I have so many questions for you, but for anyone that does not know you, which I doubt, but if they haven't, who is Dan Garner? What is what you do and why you do what you do?
Oh, yeah, my name's Dan. I work with a lot of higher level athletes and actors and CEOs. It's kind of like the niche that I put myself in is these super high pressure but high reward situations. It typically begins or in 2015 or so. I know I always wanted to work with athletes. And then one summer, a coach had contacted me to work with 10 NFL and 10 NHL athletes in the same off season. And at the time, I didn't work with any super high level people. And then overnight, I went to 20 professional athletes. So I was like, holy shit, this is going to be a lot. And it was funny because at the time when I took his phone call, I was pretending like I was cool. I was like, yeah, I'll have to check my schedule. We'll figure out price and stuff. I had nothing on my schedule and I would have done it for free. I was trying to play it super cool. And I ended up going down to California and working with all these pro athletes. And I ended up helping out with the training and the nutrition, the supplementation for the off season. And then from there, word just kind of spread that I was this pro athlete guy. I was getting everybody results. They all retained me for the in season afterwards as well. And then word just spread and things kept moving. And now I'm mostly known for utilizing labs for the purpose of precision nutrition. And that came about purely as a byproduct of being in high pressure situations and not always trusting myself. This is like an industry. I don't know what other industries are like, but this is an industry that's completely full of bias and completely full of people being excited about their own philosophy rather than being excited about science. Science is freaking boring. It is. That's why there's no documentaries called research interpretation. No, they're called game changers. And fat is not your fault, whatever it's going to be. There's a lot of things that have like these super catchy taglines. But the problem with the documentary is it has to be entertaining. And in order for it to be entertaining, it has to have an angle. And in order for it to have an angle, it leaves science in the dust. When my clients, if it's a baseball player with hundreds of millions of dollars on a line or a fighter who's been fighting for 20 years and has finally got a title shot, I don't have the opportunity to go with a philosophy or what I'm currently excited about or what I learned in a seminar last weekend. No, if I don't do my job, literally $100 million can be lost. So I need to have a system that removes my client's bias, a system that removes my bias. And the best way I have personally found how to do that is blood work and specimen analysis as a whole, because labs have a beautiful way of not giving a shit what you think about the result. Doesn't matter if your philosophy, your morals, what you're currently excited about, how much you thought something, the result is going to be the result. And that is a way to objectively analyze and objectively program moving forward in a way that removes bias and therefore gives us the highest percentage chance of success rate. So that's what I'm doing now and what I am currently most excited about.
Now, you talked about biomarkers and blood tests. What are biomarkers for those who have no idea what that actually entails?
Well, a biomarker can technically be anything. That's the funny thing about a biomarker. Your height can be a biomarker. The length
Okay.
of your finger, your BMI. These things actually are all technically biomarkers. When I for ease of communication, I say that, but I really mean blood marker.
Okay.
That is in the truest form of what I'm discussing. And a blood marker would be something that you would see on the black and white sheet on your lab report. This could be an enzyme like alkaline phosphatase. This could be a protein like albumin. It could be a hormone like testosterone. It's still considered a biomarker if it's a ratio, like the LDL to HDL ratio, or if it's a calculation such as the anion gap. These things are all considered biomarkers, but in the most simple form, for the purpose of the discussion today, when I say that, because I use that term a little bit loosely, it'll be blood, urine, saliva, and stool markers that you would receive back on your lab report.
When you hear about placebo and things like your perception, how does this can have an important impact and effect on your physiology and even on your blood markers?
Placebo effect is absolutely enormous. It's something where your mind, that's something that you truly learn as a coach. And that's how I came up. I didn't come up as a scientist. I've authored scientific papers, several scientific papers, and I have one currently in review now. But I was a coach way before. That's how I came up. And something you learn as a coach is that the mind is the body and the body is the mind. That is a two-way street, and the examples are many. If you give somebody a bunch of hormones, that really impacts the way they think in positive or negative ways. But in the same way, the way you think can really impact your hormones. So if I am on a bunch of hormones, it could change the way I think. But if also I think my hormones can change, like if I'm highly stressed, then I can lower my testosterone or create disruptions in a menstrual cycle. Things like amenorrhea can be extremely stress-induced, not just physically, but psychologically as well. So that two-way street is very big, and the placebo can work for you or it can work against you. I'm really big in belief and buy-in with a program, and that's actually in like a weird backwards way. Labs actually do provide that because in a certain sense, they're not actually even listening to me. They're listening to their own physiology. When I present their physiology with labs, then I take the guesswork out of it. We know exactly what we're going to do, how much of it we need, and when we're going to have it. They're not actually following my philosophy on, say, like if I was a paleo guy or a fasting guy or a vegan guy or a Mediterranean guy. They're not actually following any philosophy that I have. They're following their own physiology. So I get that belief and buy-in out of them in the most objectively and non-biased way possible, which is perfect. And then I get like that placebo effect with science at the same time, and then they really start killing it. The message I would really want to send people away with, though, with respect to mind and body, is that many of us think and know, and really it's undeniably scientifically demonstrated, that if we are chronically stressed, then we can think our way into being sick. But what I would want to invite people to think now is, if you can think your way into being sick, then can thinking positively begin to improve health markers? Yes, it absolutely can. This is something where if you start thinking better, if you start managing stress, these things are going to impact your labs in many ways that you would have never attributed to mindset. And that's like a real key missing component of health. I really think it's like a tripod. You have psychological, emotional, and physical. And it is kind of like a tripod, because what happens when you knock one leg out from a stool? It falls over. You have to have all three in strong ground if you're ever truly going to get optimal results and achieve optimal health.
I call it the trifecta. It has to be the three things. If it's one missing, there is not going to be sustainable results, or things are going to be short-lived. So I think definitely that combination, and like they all overlap with each other and rely on each other. Nutrition, mindset, and training, they have to go all hand in hand. To me, that's what I talk to all my clients. If you have the perfect diet or you have the perfect training, but the mindset is not right there, you don't have the strategies to manage your stress, to being able to manage and sit with your thoughts and your emotions and those kind of things that can derail you very easily on one day, and one day then turns in 3 days, and 3 days turns in a week, and then it snowballs into, okay, back to square zero, then that's what you need to really focus on. And sometimes a lot of issues we see with chronically dieting or even obesity has to do more with behavior, habits, and mindset, or even managing and sitting with emotions, rather than the actual problem itself of eating protein or eating more fiber. Sometimes they know that that's the right thing to do, and some people try to do the right thing and do everything they know is written in the books to do the best they can to lose weight, and sometimes they just don't do it because there's that piece missing, which is mindset. Now, I have a very interesting question for you. Given the fact that sometimes we have clients who truly struggle to lose weight, and it actually this could be someone who has had in the past chronically dieted in the past and all the way up until now, or someone who has PCOS or perimenopausal women, that they seem to do and put in all the things that they possibly know they can. They're trying their best into training consistently, exercising, eating right, eating healthy, getting their vegetables, getting their protein, but there's still something going on that is making them struggle with weight loss. What could that be, or what would be the things that you start looking in a blood test that perhaps could give you more information about what is going on that could solve this puzzle?
Let's hold on to that example. Let's hold on to somebody struggling to lose weight, because this is something that happens or comes to me a lot. And typically what's happened is they've tried themselves, they've tried another coach, they tried a coach, they tried a book they read, and then they finally kind of make their way to me. And they're like, Coach, I feel like I'm doing everything right. What's going on right now? And I'm like, I believe you. You probably are doing everything right. You're probably doing all the things from the outside in that you should be doing, but it's time to look from the inside out. That's really what happens when you finally get to me. Is I am always, one thing I've just found for sure across my career is a lot of people try to come up with outside in solutions for inside out problems. And until you look underneath the hood, you'll never know what actually solution you're looking for. So if somebody's coming to me and they're struggling with losing weight, I'm probably going to run a blood test on them. Blood test is the most scientifically validated. It's the most reliable in terms of the machinery that does the processing that ensures the result on the paper is actually accurate. This is an area of literature that's largely underlooked, but actually processing the specimen is huge. It's so scientifically validated, a blood test. It doesn't matter also if you're in Moscow or in Sydney or in Toronto or in LA or in Vietnam. It doesn't matter. A blood chemistry is a blood chemistry. Worldwide, you can get a comprehensive metabolic panel and a complete blood count. Very, very simple test to do. But it's going to provide you with some interesting and highly relevant things for someone even looking to achieve weight loss. I'm talking like yearly physical, simple blood work, not like elite athlete stuff. This is stuff everyone has access to. So let's discuss micronutrients just a little bit here as an example. Micronutrients, they operate essentially everything in physiology. If it's going to be for performance purposes, cognitively or physically, or for just basic survival mechanisms, there is no biochemistry without nutritional biochemistry. There's a cost to everything. There's nothing free in physiology. You're going to use some section or amount of nutrition, micro or macro, to accomplish anything. If you want to make a neurotransmitter, for example, if you want to make dopamine, you're going to convert tyrosine, you're going to use vitamin B6, and it's going to make dopamine from tyrosine. That costed an amino acid, it costed a vitamin. If you want, say, from dopamine, if you want downstream, if you want epinephrine and norepinephrine, you're going to need copper and vitamin C in order to make that leap. Something always costs something, and a very important mineral when it comes to fat loss is zinc. Zinc is something that's highly critical for thyroid production. Zinc, iodine, and selenium. But for the purpose of this conversation and that lab, we would be looking at something like alkaline phosphatase. Alkaline phosphatase is an enzyme that does hundreds of different reactions, very important ones in our body. However, when you have an enzyme, when you're looking at an enzyme in the blood, you're not looking at the amount of enzymes in the blood. What you're looking at is the amount of activity of that enzyme in the blood. That's what you're looking at when you see that, that quote biomarker. That's enzyme activity. Enzymes, however, require that catalyze. They need to be catalyzed in order for their effect to be seen or done inside the body. An enzyme that requires a vitamin would be a coenzyme, but an enzyme that requires a mineral is a cofactor. Cofactor for alkaline phosphatase is zinc. So it's like a key that goes into the lock, unlocks it, and then that enzyme is able to do something. That's important to care about, because if I have a low or even trending low alkaline phosphatase, that represents low activity on the lab, not low amount, low activity. What would be a resultant thing to investigate if there was low activity of an enzyme that's involved so much? Well, that's low catalyzed activity. What catalyzes that enzyme? Zinc. So if we have this low or trending low alkaline phosphatase, it's a representation of low zinc status. So one of the best markers you can actually get for zinc is to not look at zinc directly, because it can be very influenced by supplementation or diet. But an enzyme is something that's critical to survival. So in terms of the biological hierarchy, these are like the last things to go. So I actually really like to review micronutrients through tissues, enzymes, and proteins, as opposed to measuring the micronutrient itself, because it can be way too variable based on supplements and diet. Long story short, there is case study literature that's demonstrated that the restoration of zinc, there's actually 2 zinc deficient females in the literature that I'm thinking of, actually restored resting metabolic rate up to 900 calories within 4 months. 900 calories of restored resting metabolic rate is absolutely insane. So this person would come to me and they would say, I feel like I'm doing everything right and I don't know what's wrong. And I say, I believe you. You probably are doing everything right, but you may have this zinc issue. And the coaches before you just thought you had no willpower, just thought that you weren't disciplined, you weren't following the plan. Energy in versus energy out. It's got to be your fault. Well, she didn't actually violate the laws of thermodynamics. What she did was she had a lower resting metabolic rate because of her current zinc status. That is incredibly important to care about, because zinc's required for thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone is required for metabolic rate. Metabolic rate is required for her to lose weight. So that is kind of like a first easy thing, low-hanging fruit, that she probably already had that blood work done, that I would be able to assess to see zinc status and direct metabolic rate. Number 2, on that same lab report, you're going to see something called ALT, alanine transferase. It is classically a liver marker. It goes up in response to liver distress, say with drugs and alcohol. It also increases with muscle mass in the body because it's involved in energy metabolism as well. However, where alkaline phosphatase required a cofactor of zinc, ALT requires a coenzyme of B6. And ALT, if it is low, and actually literature would suggest if ALT is below 9, this is considered quite low. There's a very low activity of an enzyme that's involved in a lot of stuff in the body. So if we get low, and this is actually important to care about too, because your average reference range is considered 0 to usually 30 to 40 for ALT. But 0 is not a good thing. It's terrible to have 0 activity of an important enzyme in the body. Needless to say, we get below 9, we start triggering events of low suboptimal B6 status in the body. And for the very careful listeners, they would have heard me say that B6 is required for dopamine, as well as epinephrine, as well as norepinephrine. These are extremely important neurochemicals and hormones that we use in training for excellent quality training, but also for fat mobilization. Not to mention, B6 is also utilized to synthesize tryptophan into serotonin and melatonin. So our ability to actually have a good sleep at night is a memory tool. As serotonin puts you to sleep, melatonin keeps you asleep. Those things actually don't happen without B6. We need B6. So just looking looking at simple stuff like alkaline phosphatase, very representative of metabolic rate through the backdoor zinc thyroid connection. You look at ALT, very representative of mindset with respect to dopamine, but also excellent training with respect to the catecholamines, and then good sleep at night. This stuff is undeniably critical for this fat loss case study that you presented me with. And those are just two super basic markers. There are many things that go beyond that that allows people to just have a way more precise approach to their training and nutrition in a way that still remains objective and science-based.
Hydration and like dehydration. How does this impact your cognitive performance, your athletic performance, or even like your response to something like weight loss? Is it something true in being severely dehydrated or not hydrating enough throughout the day that can actually have an impact on how your body responds to a calorie deficit?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, how your body responds to your ability to do anything throughout the day. I mean, we are 70% water. 70%, 70. So it's weird to think about since we're structural beings, but we're 70% water. There isn't a single biological reaction that happens without water. Not a single one. And the literature has actually demonstrated that a 0.5% loss in total body water increases stress on the heart. So you're going to start increasing your heart rate with just a 0.5% loss in total body water. A 1% loss in total body water reduces cardiovascular fitness. So your actual, cardio or stamina, whatever you want to call it, reduces at a 1% loss in total body water. A 3% loss in total body water begins to reduce your muscular endurance. So think about an extended set, higher, something like 15, 20 reps, something like this. Or if you're a grappler, you're wrestling in jiu-jitsu, something that involves a more resistance component, muscular endurance begins to reduce at a 3% loss in total body water. And at a 4% loss in total body water, your risk for headaches increases, your actual 1RM strength decreases, and you also lose coordination. So your ability to actually be an athlete is reduced as well. So for those doing the math here, a 4% loss in total body water reduces strength, coordination, increases your headaches, reduces muscular endurance, reduces cardiovascular fitness, and then also increases stress on the heart. This is very, very, very relevant because everything I do, a speech I give to my athletes a lot is that I'll say the body is going to adapt to the degree that it is healthy. Training is only quality if you can actually adapt from it. And your ability to adapt in many ways boils down to how healthy you are, because the hierarchy that evolutionary biology gave us is survival first, biceps later. That's what's always going to happen. So if we're dehydrated, you can imagine just like hydration being in all of my limbs and extremities, and I'm doing my thing here. But the more I become dehydrated, the more that's just going to contract into my organs. And now I have got survival things going great. But my ability to optimally perform isn't even close to what it otherwise would have been if I was hydrated. And why that's pretty critical is I could have ate all organic today. I could have had my supplements. I could have slept 8 hours last night. I could have meditated and done a breath routine. I got my light exposure. If I'm dehydrated, that's a rate limiting step to performance. It doesn't matter. If I'm dehydrated, it's a rate limiting step. I don't care what else happened. So hydration is unbelievably key for survival, which makes it unbelievably relevant for performance, that we handle that so that we can actually perform with whatever is left over. Micronutrients is the exact same thing. It's going to go to survival stuff first, way before it's going to go to performance and adaptation from cosmetic or athletic pursuits that you have. In your lab work, you can look at blood urea nitrogen. You'll see it as BUN. You can also look at sodium, at serum magnesium, and you can look at hematocrit and hemoglobin. A lot of different markers I just shot at you, but they're all acute dehydration. All of those are acute markers. One of the most important ones to look at is albumin. Albumin is a protein that the liver produces, and albumin is a chronic dehydration marker. So you could have any of those acute markers elevated. It still matters, and you should still watch your hydration, but it matters a lot more when your albumin is elevated. Because albumin, and due to its half-life, it's a representation of about approximately 20 days of dehydration. So that is a chronic dehydration marker. And why that's like important for everybody here too is it's not complicated. A lot of the labs that I talk about are pretty damn complicated in that many things can bring a marker up, and also many things can bring it back down. So there's a real art to interpretation. It's not a simple recipe book, high versus low. There's a real art to what's actually going on with the balance of the body. Albumin's not complicated though. If it's up, you're chronically dehydrated. That's it. That's a wrap. So that's how hydration can impact the body, health, performance, coordination, the whole thing. And that's how I would assess it on a lab to ensure that I'm actually assessing it in an objective way and that I'm programming accordingly.
From what I hear so far, hydration plus really having a good quality nutrition that is bringing up all these micronutrients is going to bring a lot of the subtle issues that we don't really see on the surface. Is there anything else that you would say is a missing piece for knowing that could be a limiting factor that is sort of like subtle or invisible that we need to know that may make a huge difference in how your body responds to anything, and sort of like a treatment for weight loss?
Treatment for weight loss and how our body responds. I think a important component for everybody that they could look at would be the cortisol to DHEA sulfate ratio. Quite hidden. I'll preface one thing first. I work with super elite performers, so sometimes the things that I say, they might matter that last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%. So sometimes at that level, 1% can be $100 million. So that's why in my world, little things aren't little things. Little things are the biggest things because everybody is already at the highest genetic elite. So any 1% I can scratch out of my opponent, that's super, super relevant and what I'm paid to do. So there are subsets of the population that just need to do some simple things and it'll take them a way long way. However, in the same breath, zinc was 900 calories, right? It'd be tough to call that small. At 4% loss of total body water, we listed 6 gigantic things. And there's so much more you could still get into with hydration. So like these sound smaller because it's easy to just talk about energy balance and macronutrients. But kind of like how we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, we know a lot of that stuff. Really, you're setting your deficit and you're setting your protein goal. And then how you divide the next two is kind of up to preference, so long as you don't do it wild. It's like these setting your calories and setting your macros is something that we actually have quite a firm grip of. And going further than that is what really helps people take things to the next level a lot. Going to your question with that preface in place, the cortisol to DHEA sulfate ratio is one of the most impactful things anybody could look at in their labs because it's non-specific in the way that it analyzes stress in the body. It's like this beautiful bird's eye view stress management ratio because you have cortisol, which is our stress, and you have DHEA sulfate, which you can see as a resiliency towards that stress. This ratio, stressor versus resiliency, it has been connected to inflammation status in the body, immune system status in the body, injury risk. It is the anabolic to catabolic ratio because our cortisol is highly catabolic, but our DHEA sulfate in and of itself is anabolic. But then it is also the precursor to androstenedione and testosterone. It's also the precursor to the estrogen family here too. So it makes it relevant. This is a male-female ratio. It's important for so many things. And if somebody is in pursuit of weight loss, especially if they've run into a plateau, they are at a massive risk of under recovering because they have been hypocaloric for an extended period of time. They might be frustrated that they're not losing as much weight as they want. So they're adding insult to injury with psychological stress on top of the hypocalorism. So you're getting hit kind of on both ends here. And you're probably not enjoying life quality as a whole as a chronic dieter. A lot of people out there are chronic dieters, and their subjective scores on how amazing they feel in a chronic state of hypocalorism is not exactly great. So you can run into under recovery, and then even just the state of being under recovered can create a hormonal problem that impacts your mindset all by itself. The cortisol to DHEA ratio should be less than 0.09. Okay, so basic calculator. Cortisol divided into DHEA sulfate. If it is above 0.09, I would certainly consider you suboptimal. And actually, don't take my word for it. Look in the scientific literature. You want to be between 0 and 0.09. This would represent a physiology that is currently resilient enough to deal with the stressors that it is currently being exposed to. If this is above 0.09 or way above 0.09, even if you have a goal that you're really fired up about, I would actually pull back. I mean, pull back, simplify the process. This is a scenario where you're going to increase your risk for injury. But with that imbalance of cortisol, I mean, you being familiar in the competition world, how much do you think cortisol impacts weight loss and water retention? A lot.
Huge. Yep.
Huge, right? And it happens like this. You're stressed out on show day, you can see it. These things happen fast, and they can mask weight loss too. Your weight could be stable. You're actually dropping body fat, but you're retaining water because of cortisol's affinity with aldosterone and the way that water retention mechanics work. This is something that has to be corrected. So that's where I would pull back and do a diet break at maintenance for 1 to 2 weeks, and then go back into hypocalorism from there, and your results will be way better for it. But for total systemic health and for ongoing progression, that's probably the best ratio males and females could ever use.
The big question now is, how do we improve these biomarkers in order to be optimal or better if we come with the premises that we were already doing a lot of things right? We were trying to optimize diet. Now we're thinking about hydration. Okay, how do we actually improve hydration to the level that is going to be better and optimal for our body to be in a good place to be for responding to anything that we're trying to do with our systems? And same with like cortisol. Like, we know that we have to deal with the stress. We have to deal with how to navigate emotions. But what would be your response to how do we actually make this like an actual protocol, actually something that is implementable for someone who wants to put their hands on, okay, I need to now work on my hydration. What do I do?
Sure. So a real like low hanging fruit, easy thing to do, a pretty standard recommendation is 1/2 ounce of water per pound of body weight per day. So if somebody was, I know this, you're working at different metrics, but if somebody was 200 pounds, then they would simply do 100 ounces of water per day. 1/2 ounce of water per pound of body weight per day. And then that would be 1.1 ounces of water per kilo per day. So that it's just the same math, just different metrics, the way in which you would break that down. That is an easy thing to do. Hydration, though, is a little bit wavy because if I've got one guy in Dubai and it's summer versus me in Canada in the winter, our hydration is going to be a little different due to the sweat loss difference. So one of the best things that you could do is actually a recommendation from a guy named Lyle McDonald. Way back in the day, he made a recommendation. I believe it was 8 urinations per day and 2 within the first hour after exercise. He said if you are in that zone and it is either clear or just off yellow, you're pretty good. And I tend to agree with that. It's funny because it sounds non-scientific until you think about it. And then you start, the half an ounce of water per pound of body weight per day. That's a great place to start. But due to environment and also due to just individual sweat rates, you see some people at the gym sweating buckets, and then another person in the same gym doing the same workout. It doesn't sweat the same. So following the urination rule of about 8 per day at least, and then it also being clear or off yellow, those are some of the greatest indications of hydration that you could have. I would take that a step further and incorporate electrolytes though, because water isn't hydration. Hydration is water plus electrolytes. Because although the water is the retentive quality that we want to have, the electrolytes are what allow it to actually move intracellularly and extracellularly. To give you kind of a weird example, if you had a dead frog in front of you right now, and you sprinkled some salt on the dead frog's legs, his legs would actually start to contract even though he was dead. And that's because salt causes muscular contraction. But on that same frog, if you sprinkled some potassium on him, his legs would begin to relax. Sodium, muscular contraction, potassium, muscular relaxation. And that's an important balance to have, because contraction without relaxation is a cramp. And that's another big sign of dehydration. So that sodium potassium balance, that's quite important. Equally important is magnesium, arguably more important, because magnesium regulates intracellular and extracellular passage of sodium and potassium. So you can think about it like the security guy. It's the doorman. It doesn't matter if your sodium and potassium are optimal. If you don't have enough magnesium, then their passage through the cell membrane doesn't happen at the rate you want it to have. So between sodium, potassium, magnesium, these three minerals are very critical for hydration. And then following that urine and urine color approach is something that you could do for hydration, and then assess for dehydration symptoms from there. Urine color, dry mouth, cramping. If you don't have
Headaches.
those, you're performing well. Headaches. Yeah, headaches could be another one. Dry lips. You get those general symptoms. These are things that, so long as you're not having those with this approach, you're doing a very good job. You can also get something that's actually behind those boxing gloves there. There's a NIX sensor, NIX. You put it on, then you have an app on your phone. It actually gives you a real-time reading of your hydration electrolyte status through your sweat. So that's a pretty cool thing. Gatorade also offers one. It's like $10, super cheap. A lot of people don't know about it. So that's an easy tool that you could use to assess hydration. It's something I've done for golfers, because if you have a golf tournament in Toronto and then your next one's in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, your sweat rate across 18 holes is just dramatically different. So I've really had to dial those guys in over time. So that could be a good hydration protocol design for somebody to get into. Follow all those steps, but don't kill any frogs. Moving on to the stress component of it. Stress is going to come down to how you audit your own life, because our ability to fight stress lots of times comes down to our ability to be real with ourselves. Most of the time, what we are stressed about is how out of alignment we are with our actual morals and actions. If you are out of alignment with how you actually want to be, there's going to be this low-grade stressor constantly in your system all the time. And that's really just a way in which you need to enter a tough conversation with yourself that you need to have. I think a lot of people also have stress too that they earn. I've talked about this in the past with respect to, I used to work with a lot of hockey players, and something they always really wanted to get rid of was pre-game anxiety. They'd be like, Coach, I perform so much better in practice and I get a lot of stress before games. Is there something you can do to help me out? And I'm running down the Rolodex right now. I was pretty brutal with them. I'd say, okay, did you follow your hockey diet this week? No. Okay, did you do your hockey training this week? Yeah, okay, so you did your hockey training, but not your hockey diet. Okay. Did you do your hockey mobility? No. Did you do your hockey sleep routine to make sure you got that done? No. I'm like, okay, man, you earned this anxiety. I'm sorry to tell you, but you earned anxiety because you can't possibly be confident when you are not prepared. If you don't do what you need to do in order to be prepared on a certain day, you earned anxiety. And your anxiety is actually trying to help you. Anxiety is a state of mind designed to be uncomfortable enough to force you into action to create a life that doesn't make you anxious anymore. You use that emotion. That emotion is a tool. Anxiety is a state of mind designed to make you uncomfortable enough to create a life that doesn't make you anxious anymore. That comes down to taking action, being more prepared so that you don't have anxiety next time, and that you convert that anxiety into confidence because you know everything that you need to do in order to be prepared on that day. That is, in essence, a program. If you want to reduce stress and you want to design a protocol for it, have a tough conversation with yourself about what you're stressed about. And also ask yourself, did you actually do what you needed to do to be fucking prepared on this day? If your answer is no, then I don't want to give you ashwagandha. I don't want to give you rhodiola. I don't want to give you inositol because it's not going to actually help you. That's like the high performers never talk like that. The high performers do what they need to do to get the job done, period. If you are predisposed, sure, some passion flower, some lavender, some ashwagandha, some rhodiola. These are evidence-based options to use or perhaps help curb symptoms until you figure your shit out. But until you figure your shit out, you're going to have that stress in you.
Yeah, they just like Band-Aids.
Right. Band-Aids can help. They can work so long as you're not lying to yourself and you're still moving in the right direction towards living in alignment with who you want to be and truly being prepared for the goal you want to accomplish.
Something so valuable and important when it comes to doing an audit of yourself, and don't try to do more than what you can handle as well. Like sometimes especially when we think about people pleasers or those who feel like they need to say yes to everything and commit to a lot of things, that adds additional stress to what they actually can do realistically. And I guess as part of everything that you're saying is be true to yourself and be able to just revise what matters to you, what aligns with your goals, and go from there.
Baby steps are still steps. Like we've taken extended periods of time to do anything. Like we learned to walk over many years. We kind of forget how long that took. We learned to talk over many years. We forget how long that took. We did school for so many years. We forget how long that took. Even when you think about like, how long ago did COVID happen? Well, COVID happened 4 years ago. It's like, God damn, that was 4 years ago? That was so fast. Imagine if I started I'd be 4 years into this thing now. Like time goes by like this. So any kind of baby step that you can make right now is the only step that you can take right now. And it's the only one you need because time is going to fly and it'll fly fast and you'll be a totally different person 1 year from now.
I want to cover something that I find that it is important, and it comes back down to energy availability and being on a chronic deficit for a long time, or even when we think about athletes that are under low energy availability due to high stress, high training levels, not enough intake, or bodybuilders or physique competitors. Why is it not uncommon to find that there are common symptoms of bloating, constipation, diarrhea that are occurring all the time, especially if you struggle with your digestion? What is the relationship between low energy availability and its effects on the digestion, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, digestive enzymes, everything working properly? And how does what is a kind of like that correlation?
Yeah, so it's been seen a lot in the literature that low energy availability, these people training a lot, dieting a lot, being just purely in a state of hypocaloricism is going to increase stress, or specifically cortisol in the body. And that's not a bad thing. Cortisol, it's not a bad, there's no such thing as a bad hormone. Hormones all have physiological functions in our body. Our body would never create a hormone for the sole purpose of only destroying us. People point out like cortisol's bad, insulin's bad. No, they're just doing their job. The only thing that's bad is if anything's chronically high or chronically low. Cortisol in a good amount, it's actually anti-inflammatory. It liberates fatty acids from fat cells. It's immunostimulatory. It does a lot of really good things for us. It also helps us fight or flight if we come across a bear or something like that. So this is very important stuff. But if it's chronically elevated in somebody who's training a lot, who's got low energy availability, well, undeniably demonstrated in literature that elevated cortisol leads to hypochlorhydria. Hypo, absence of, chlorhydria, stomach acid. So we're in this low state of stomach acid, which not bad acutely, very bad chronically. It's actually been demonstrated that just your mind can give you stomach ulcers. So you can actually get holes in your gut purely from the way you think. And that's because our gut has this mucosal layer. It's got a thick, the stomach is the first organ that enters after your esophagus. It's going to enter your stomach. Your stomach's got this pool of acid in it. And in order for that acid to not burn your stomach, we have this really thick mucosal layer to protect us from it. But now, if you think your way into having high stress or diet or train your way into having high stress, well, then it's going to reduce stomach acid output. And when you have a lower stomach acid output, the body is the ultimate efficiency machine. So instead of having a mucosal layer this thick, it'll have a mucosal layer about this thick. And then any periods of relief where you actually aren't as stressed anymore, you can actually increase the amount of ulcer burns because your reduced stress actually increased acid output again. But now your mucosal layer didn't have enough time to adapt. So it's going to burn right through there and literally can create a hole in your stomach purely by the way you think. But how this works typically with competitors and athletes is you will create a state of hypochlorhydria. Hypochlorhydria, your stomach acid is typically involved in doing three things. Number one, it closes the esophageal sphincter. So that's number one. If you get in here and stomach acid is working on some food, it wants to close this esophageal sphincter so acid doesn't shoot up here and give you acid reflux. That's the first thing it does. The second thing it does is sterilize your food. So it's not an anatomical mistake that the first thing something from the outside world comes into contact with in your internal world is a vat of acid. That is not by mistake. It wants to kill any pathogens that could have been on that food before it allows anything else to enter the gastrointestinal system. And lastly, number three, what stomach acid does is it breaks down protein. Helps break down proteins into peptides and amino acids, okay? So with those three things in check, it creates your digestion's like a symphony. Things are supposed to kick off. You've got salivary amylase. You're supposed to chew your food properly. The stomach does its important things. And then you have your gallbladder secreting bile, getting rid of or emulsifying fats into fatty acids. You have the pancreas secreting enzymes to break down macronutrients even further. And then you have the brush border enzymes and bacteria in the duodenum, ileum, jejunum, and then it's going to enter the colon. You've got lots of bacteria there. This is like, we're talking about like the symphony and orchestra of like 8 to 10 organs and bacteria all at the same time. But bad digestion north equals bad digestion south. If we don't do our job upstream, it's impossible for anything to operate properly downstream. So what happens is we essentially have this food, two things can happen. First one's real easy to understand. If you're not killing pathogens before they enter your gut, then you're not killing pathogens before they enter your gut. And then you will be susceptible to bloating, distension, water retention, constipation, or diarrhea, among any other gastrointestinal complaint that you could. Another common one is waking up with abs and feeling confident and then going to bed looking like you're pregnant. That is another very common one, the pathogenic presence. Very easy to understand, right? We're not killing pathogens, we're not digesting shit properly. Second thing is if we have undigested food, We'll use the case of protein. Protein was supposed to be broken down. Let's make up numbers. If we had a chicken breast and we had enough stomach acid to break down 80% of that chicken breast, then 80% of it, digestion and assimilation, is going to go our way. The remaining 20%, due to hypochlorhydria, now we just have this chicken that should have been broken down properly, and it won't be. Bacteria will break down what you don't break down. It sounds kind of weird, but you have a lot of things that live in you that aren't you. They also like to eat. They also like to thrive. They also like to replicate. They've also evolved to not die. So then you have this undigested chicken, and when bacteria eats protein, it putrefies. Okay, it goes through a process called putrefaction. Bacteria eating carbs, fermentation. Bacteria eating fat, rancidification. Fats go rancid. There's terms for each of these. Bacteria does this a lot. But if we have this undigested protein, bacteria has access to it. Bacteria eating that is going to create replication and overgrowth in those colonies, and that can create a bacterial imbalance as well. On top of it, just purely being maldigestion, which is also associated with bloating, gas, loose stools, and drawing water into the intestines, which gives you that bloated look, but the abs are still on the outside. It's kind of a weird sort of look. That's when you're drawing water into the small intestine. That's what will happen there. So in essence, the esophageal sphincter, in terms of people being in a low energy state and stress, that can increase acid reflux, which actually happens a lot in the end stages of prep, or in my world, in the end stages of fight camp. That's number one thing that kind of stress can create. Number two is, if we're not breaking down our protein, bad digestion north is never going to result in bad digestion south. And then number three, if we're not killing pathogens, we leave the window more open for things like fungal, parasitic, or bacterial overgrowth to take place, because our number one and first pass defense structure isn't operating the way it should.
Is there any way that you can actually attack or have a strategy to counteract those issues, especially if you're already, like, you are in a state where you can't do very much, especially like if I am an athlete or a physical competitor, this is likely, like, I'm at risk of this could happen because of the energy availability being low. Can you do anything about it?
You can take our Band-Aid. Band-Aids are nice. Band-Aids can work sometimes. Yeah, I'm serious. This is an opportunity for a Band-Aid. If you are going into a known high stress state and it's a part of your goal, well, sometimes high stress equals high reward. I would be more prone to using something like ashwagandha in that case, because it's truly going to suppress cortisol. It suppresses it up to 33%, I've seen in the literature. But ashwagandha also does a pretty cool thing. It increases DHEA. So it actually by itself helps that cortisol to DHEA ratio we were talking about previously. Well, Band-Aid can certainly help there. Another thing you can do is breath work or meditation in any way that works with you best. You don't have to follow any specific protocol. Whatever is going to help you be consistent is going to be good. Prioritizing sleep is a big component of regulating cortisol as well. So between sleep, breath work, meditation, and Band-Aids, you already have a lot to work with. I think another thing you could do is not start too late. Some people, they just try to get a blast transformation in like the last 8 weeks. So their deficit has to be enormous instead of them starting 16, 18, 20 weeks out and working your way down, taking a diet break, working your way down, taking a diet break. That process is simply preventative in the way in which you actually use periodization instead of just crash diet all the time. That's another thing you could do. I think I don't know, fourth or fifth thing you could do is truly like seek macros and not chase just what your coach is telling you. If they say you have to have broccoli, but you feel bloated as shit on it, I would not advise continuing it. If you coach says you have to have sweet potato, but you feel so much better on rice, Listening to your body is as important as the numbers in that case. I think I consider subjective and objective to be equal, especially when it comes to digestion. So whatever numbers you're trying to hit, I would use satiety because that's going to help regulate stress by itself. I'd use satiety and digestion as main proxies for that. Between those strategies, you would have plenty to work with there. If you did want to take it a step further, something you could do is get a stool test. I don't think that's a bad thing to do. Before your contest, you can actually just do like a checkpoint. Am I prepared to go into prep? Am I like, because if I start prep at 16 weeks out and my digestion's already not good, it's probably not going to be any better at 10, 6, 4 weeks out. It's probably going to get progressively worse and not progressively better. So that you could probably do a decent checkpoint, do blood work and a stool analysis. Your blood work could be that basic one that I talked about previously. Complete blood count and comprehensive metabolic panel is like $40. And it's something that I think everybody should be doing anyways, but would be very valuable to ensure your body's even prepared. It's like a car before going in on a race. You got to make sure that thing is going to run for the entire race. In the human body, that means doing your blood work. And then if you're somebody who's pre-exposed to gastric issues, or if you already freaking have them, the stool test that I use is the Genova Diagnostics GI-FX test. It's just one sample that's sent in, and it gives you a huge comprehensive overview on maldigestion, gastrointestinal inflammation. It does pathogenic screenings, and then also assesses metabolic balance within the gastrointestinal tract as well. It's one of the most well-rounded ones that I've ever seen. It's the one I personally use with my athletes.
Is that available internationally or just in the US?
I use it in Canada. I use it in the US, and I've had many European clients use it. I'm unsure about Australia, but it's definitely available internationally.
I want to do a sort of like a last big question, which is about what would be your non-negotiables when it comes to consider supplementation? Like, we know that these could be band-aids, or they can just be something that may supplement your diet if your diet is not well-rounded. So what would be if your diet is really well, even if you're doing everything that you should be doing, how do you secure that 1% extra just to make sure you have everything top of the top?
So, I mean, I might register one of the most boring answers that you've ever got in your podcast, but I'll start with a multivitamin, a crazy thing called a multivitamin. A high quality one though, just because it's true. Biochemistry does not occur without nutritional biochemistry, and nothing is free. There is a vitamin and a mineral cost to anything that you want to do. And in 2024, the margin for error in competition isn't what it was in the 90s, the 80s. What it takes to break a world record now compared to what it did back then is completely different. So ensuring that you have micronutrient availability to sustain the energy production, neurochemicals, hormones, all these things that you want, not suboptimal, but optimal. I do consider that very important. I could go on examples all day about the different vitamins and their hierarchy and what that's going to do for health, but also performance. Very, very important. Number 2 would be omega-3s. Omega-3s, I sound like an infomercial salesman when I talk about them, but I swear to God I do. But wait, there's more. It's something that, it's another one where don't take my word for it. Go look at the literature. Omega-6 to 3 ratios in the diet. Arachidonic acid to omega-3 ratios in the diet. There are known ratios that you should stay within in order to optimize fat loss, optimize muscle gain. 30% of our brain is omega-3s. So in the same way that people are consuming protein to try and feed their muscle, I want you to start thinking about taking in omega-3s to feed your brain. It is connected to anxiety, to depression, to neuronal communication. Your brain is structurally made of it. So it's a huge component of it. Omega-3s regulate inflammation. Omega-3s actually support the gastrointestinal barrier, the gut barrier. I did a full research review on this just a few months ago, and omega-3s play so many roles in the gut that arguably make it the most underrated gut supplement out there. I truly believe that. It plays a huge role in that. Omega-3s regulate blood sugar. They lubricate your joints, so you're gonna have higher movement quality. The list freaking goes on. I'm the infomercial guy again. So having 3 grams, having 3 grams of combined EPA and DHA per day is quite key. In terms of ratios, a 1-to-1 ratio of EPA and DHA, that is going to be great for things body, but also mind. If you want to lean a little bit towards the mind, I would have 2 grams of DHA and 1 gram of EPA. If you want to lean a little bit more towards cardiovascular health and inflammation management, I would have 2 grams of EPA and just 1 gram of DHA. So multivitamin, fish oil, or algae, you get high quality omega-3s in regardless. Number 3 would be magnesium. Magnesium, because of the dead frog analogy that we talked about previously. Magnesium, though, we also lose it in our sweat. It's important for muscular contraction. It's huge for blood sugar management. It's excellent for sleep quality. It's also involved in neurogenesis. So it's kind of like another hierarchy thing. If we're low in magnesium, do you think our body's going to prioritize magnesium for brain management or bicep growth?
Any type of magnesium, though?
Magnesium citrate is actually the most bioavailable form, and it's also usually the cheapest. So citrate is a really easy one. Magnesium oxide is used best as a laxative because its absorption is quite poor, but it does help you go to the bathroom. So it can be used in the case of like weight cuts, or if you're just constipated, something like that. But citrate's definitely a good one. Threonate is one that's good to have before bed because it's connected to theanine, helps with GABA production. So if you're just after magnesium as a mineral, magnesium citrate and magnesium threonate are the same in terms of magnesium. But if you are after more of a calming effect, magnesium threonate does help you calm down and reduce anxiety before bed. There are some studies out there that suggest magnesium threonate has a neuroprotective quality, but they are just rat studies. So it's kind of like, they might be there, but more, I'll just tell you as a coach, it does really help calm you down regardless. So if you're after magnesium, just get citrate. If you're after magnesium and a better night's sleep, threonate is definitely a good option. Multi, fish oil, magnesium, huge. I'm going to add creatine to that list now. I probably wouldn't have said this maybe 5 years ago or so. I actually think everybody should be on creatine, and I think that it belongs in the same conversation as a multivitamin now. It does. In terms of long-term safety, cognitive benefits, muscle strength, physical fitness, overall health, it's a health supplement. It used to be about bros getting jacked. It's not that at all anymore. So 3 to 5 grams per day, no cycling, can run this thing indefinitely. Creatine monohydrate, though, about monohydrate, why it's the king, and I compared it to every other one in the literature. It's the cheapest and it's the best one. So let's rock with that list. Multi, fish oil, magnesium, creatine, that checks 1 million boxes and is incredibly evidence-based for you.
Where can people find you? And if you were to say, or people wanted to know, how do we learn a bit more about interpreting lab work? What would be your recommendation? Okay,
so you guys can find me, like in this live, at Dan Garner Nutrition on Instagram. That's right. This is where I'm most active. I'm not really active anywhere else. So at Dan Garner Nutrition on Instagram. I post a few times a week over there. Now, if somebody wants to learn more about labs, I created an entire new software called Vitality Blueprint that interprets your labs for you. So you can utilize Vitality Blueprint. Currently only available in the US right now, but worldwide options coming this summer. I'm not sure if that's been announced anywhere yet, so you guys might be hearing it here first. Worldwide options coming very, very soon. Go to vitalityblueprint.com. You will have your labs analyzed in a high performance manner. The software that I designed is really the combination of my adult life's work. It really is. It's my entire brain put into an algorithm. I've been working on it for over a year. And when you put your blood work through this software, it instantaneously does over 100,000 calculations on your blood work. So just in terms of human computation, it's impossible. Most people's experience is someone looking at their blood and going, you're in the normal range, you're good. They get about 10 seconds of no thinking compared to 100,000 instantaneous calculations. So I truly believe that that is my life's work in the world of labs. That's at vitalityblueprint.com. Currently, it's a software interpretation company. And is also a huge education wing to it once you get in the dashboard. But even beyond that, I will be doing an entire interpretation course as well that will be done under the Vitality banner. So
that would
all of that's
be
there.
amazing.
That
would be
is
awesome.
definitely in the works. People have been beating my door down for it for too long, so I've got to get that done, and that's already in the works, already going to happen. And last place to find me is biomolecularathlete.com. That's where Dr. Andy Galpin and I have joined forces, and that's an education company on training and nutrition. So you can learn more about training and nutrition from me and Andy there, blood work at Vitality Blueprint, and all things about my crazy self at Dan Garner Nutrition on Instagram.
You are amazing, Dan, and I appreciate you coming here, having the time. I know this is a very important time for you and your family, and you were able to just give us this precious time and spend time with us. I appreciate you. I think this is going to be so helpful for so many people that it's just so refreshing to hear a different perspective, a much more in-depth information about, okay, where else can I look if I already done everything that I have done before? So I think this is going to be super helpful. This is going to be available in our feeds, and also it's going to be available soon in YouTube as well. I hope you have a great day. Hope we can do a second round, because I believe me, I have like another 20 questions that I couldn't ask.
Okay, if we do a second round, we should probably start scheduling it now, because we're gonna do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 schedules before we'll be able to get it in. But no, I'm kidding. Of course, I'll 100% be happy to do this again. I would love to.
It's amazing. Well, Dan, have a great night, and I hope to talk to you very soon. And thank you so much for being here.
Amazing. Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.